When are two curves better than one? When you're talking about when to begin loosening the coronavirus restrictions. That's what we're about to discuss. Whether it's the cable news networks or online news sites, all discussions regarding when to begin easing the restrictions related to the coronavirus seem to be based around one single factor: flattening the curve. Essentially, it's the point where the number of people needing treatment at any one time stops climbing and becomes a consistent number. When that occurs, the curve essentially becomes flat and then potentially begins to decline. But here's the issue: while we wait for this flattening to happen, time doesn't stop. Life's responsibilities don't cease to exist. And the stress curve for many is more vertical than that of the coronavirus itself. Well, we've all been under these government stay at home orders waiting for this flattening to happen. Some small businesses have closed, many with no hope of reopening. People have lost their jobs, and many who work for those small businesses are now without a job to come back to at all. And what about the indirect injuries, both personal and financial, and the deaths caused by the measures meant to contain the virus? Where's the curve showing these impacts? In simple Econ 101 terms, at what point along the coronavirus curve does the economic impact of families and society outweigh the medical benefit of these government policies? The overwhelming majority of American families live paycheck to paycheck. We all know that. But the number of monthly recurring bills is significantly higher than any other point in history. Add to that the loss of a job or watching the business that provided for your family go under and knowing that there's no job to go back to even when this nightmare's over. Many people can't even envision a light at the end of this dark tunnel, but rather just a continuation of this black abyss that will go on even after the government declares everything's okay again. Given such circumstances, some begin to look for ways to escape the heavy burden of being unable to meet their financial obligations and provide for their family. Unfortunately, this despair has led some to addiction and even suicide. Then there still remains the rising numbers of domestic abuse cases. Experts agree that one of the main factors leading to domestic dispute is family finances. The financial strain caused by these measures on some families have been akin to throwing gasoline on a fire, inflaming once small family disputes into domestic assault or much worse. Those tasked with analyzing the impacts of the coronavirus should be spending as much time quantifying these injuries and deaths as they are trying to estimate the date that the coronavirus curve will peak. So back to what a real two-curve analysis would look like. When all factors have been properly accounted for, there will exist three potential outcomes. The first is where the intersection of the two curves occur after the coronavirus is in decline. The second is where the intersection of the curves occur once the coronavirus curve is flat, both of which are not much of a concern unless elected leaders have a desire to continue these restrictions after the coronavirus has peaked. But it's this third outcome that could very well be closer to reality, one where the intersection of the two curves occurs before the coronavirus curve flattens, one where the harm to families from these government measures begins to exceed the medical benefits before the curve flattens, and the one that will require those elected to executive office to listen to and weigh the impacts presented by small business, economic experts, mental health experts, and our law enforcement community just as much as they do the infectious disease experts. So I ask that any of these cable network talking heads or politicians that wanted to continue to give their opinions as to why we can't consider easing these restrictions to please do so with a two-curve graphic, because showing just one curve, well, that's just half the story.